Food security continues to be a major issue for many Hawaii residents. Today on Spotlight Now, we focus in on the individuals and organizations hoping to make a difference.
Amy Miller from the Foodbank is here, along with First Lady Jaime Green, to talk about her efforts. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suji and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, aloha, and thanks for tuning in here to Spotlight Now on yet another wet Tuesday. We hope you are all staying safe and dry as we navigate through this wet weather throughout the state of Hawaii. And happy St. Patrick's Day. I inadvertently wore green. I forgot. Yunji says this is green.
I'm maintaining that this is a mint, okay?
Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Before we begin the conversation and welcome in our guests, we always like to invite you, the viewing audience, to participate in the conversation. You can head over to Facebook, enter your question and comments there. You can also email us here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com. It's one of the unique things about this show is the interaction that you get to have directly with our guests and providing comments and questions. So we will be tracking it throughout the show.
And we have some excellent guests today, and starting us off is Amy Miller, the CEO of the Hawaii Foodbank, here to talk about hunger in Hawaii and some new data that you have looking at a major new report. Amy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's always so good to see you. I want to start off sort of, table setting here. How widespread is food insecurity in Hawaii?
So food insecurity is kind of maybe a hidden issue, not something that you see every day, but it's a very critical issue. 32% of our households in Hawaii are food insecure. That means 1 in 3 households don't have enough food to make sure everyone in that household can live a healthy, active lifestyle. And that can range, right? It could be a family who needs to make difficult choices about the kinds of food. So maybe you pivot to less healthy but less expensive food items, all the way to families that are skipping meals, going without, sometimes not eating for whole days because there just isn't enough money for food. About 11% of our households fall into that category. So folks that are on a regular basis not eating for whole days just because there isn't enough for food.
At the end of last year, the Food Bank provided a report that took a look at where we stand on things. What out of that report that was released, what were some of the things that were surprising to you or that stood out that you think people might also be surprised to hear about?
So there are a few things that were, I think, a little shocking to us, even those of us that work in this space. One was just the percentage of people who are in this very food insecure category. So that's what I was just mentioning, people who are not just making some compromises, but really sometimes even losing weight. And so the majority of our food insecure population here in Hawaii actually falls into that category. So that's really concerning, right? Again, this is the United States of America. This is Hawaii. It's a place where we all take care of each other, that so many of our neighbors are really in this quite dire situation. I think that was one thing that really stood out to us. Another thing was looking at our keiki. So that was one category, families with children, where we saw the numbers actually go up a little bit. So we saw 34% of households with children, those kids are food insecure. And the other population that's concerning within our households with children are caretakers. So amongst adults, in that household, 34% of the kids might be food insecure, but 45% of those parents and caregivers are food insecure. So it makes sense, right? All of those of us with kids, everyone would make that choice, right? The parents are going without to make sure their kids have enough to eat. But as a result, almost half of our parents and caregivers are food insecure here in Hawaii. And that's just not okay.
Almost half. That is shocking.
It is shocking.
When you think about that number, now you did say, because I think that people aren't really going to necessarily understand what food insecure really means. So when you talk about that, can you explain a little bit about what that actually looks like day to day?
So again, it could be episodic, right? So we asked people, like looking at back at the last 12 months, were there times where you skipped meals, where you had to choose less nutritious foods? And again, for some families, it might be just borderline. We actually also have, on top of that, another 17% of our households are what we call marginally food secure. So these are folks who actually are considered food secure, but they're nervous, not sure if you're going to be able to make ends meet. But then again, all the way down to people really having to make hard choices. And this can look a lot of different ways, right? It could be, gosh, what am I going to feed my kids tonight? Maybe we just pull something together that's not really a full meal. It could be skipping meals. I was speaking with a dad a few months ago who had 4 kids. They receive SNAP benefits, but it doesn't always last to the end of the month. So he told me, yeah, I didn't eat dinner last night. I'm probably not going to eat again for another couple days because I need to make sure my kids have enough. I just tell my family that I'm intermittent fasting. So the kids might not even know. So this is one of those things, again, it's so widespread, and yet many of us might not realize that it is our neighbors, our co-workers, our kids' friends at school. There are lots of folks that are really struggling, and we might not even see it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point that you make there, because when you think about oftentimes the stigma of those who are going without food, you have this perception or this stigma of it maybe being a homeless person. The scenarios you're describing are families, people who we see every day, neighbors that we may not know about. When you think about those who have been affected, I mean, who are those populations? Are there specific areas? Are there anything that you've learned through the data and through these reports that identify where these people are living and any commonality between them?
Sure. So one of the things we learned was kind of looking across the state, especially our neighbor islands are especially affected. So households living on Hawaii Island, 42% are food insecure. That's, again, staggering. I think really hard to see that. Young adults are another population. So more than half of our young adults and folks who are enrolled in higher ed are food insecure. So that was actually a population that we weren't quite tracking quite as much, but we're really now trying to see how we can partner. And it makes sense, right? If you first time on your feet, this is a really hard time to get housing, to get a job, kind of across the board. What we are seeing, and this is what we see actually in our experience working with our partner agencies, many of the people who are seeking food assistance for the first time, these are families who are working. Sometimes they're working 2 jobs. They have never needed to ask for help before, and it's just things are getting too tough. But that's also exactly why the food bank is there, right, and our partners. So we're really hopeful that we can reach out to people who might feel embarrassed about needing to ask for help or not knowing where to go. And our message is, Hawaii Food Bank is for you. Hawaii Food Bank is for everyone. There should be no shame attached to needing to ask for help. This is a basic human right. And so please come. But we did see, in our study, amongst folks who are food insecure and are not currently getting help through the Charitable Food Network, the main 2 reasons we hear are they say they don't know where to get help, but they are embarrassed. So I think that stigma is a real issue, especially here in Hawaii.
The last time we had you on, you were here because there had been a pause to the SNAP benefits, and there was basically a crisis happening where families did not, those cards didn't work anymore. I'm curious, we're out of that period now, but there are still large changes at the federal level in terms of priorities from this administration to the last one, and that, of course, is having an impact here. What are you seeing? Because you did mention, this dad that you were talking to received SNAP benefits. Are people still receiving SNAP benefits to the level that they were before, and how does the federal priority impact us here at home?
I think what we're really worried about is what's coming up, not necessarily what's happened so far. So some of the changes that were made to SNAP policy haven't quite hit Hawaii yet. So we'll start to see some of those changes rolling into effect this spring and summer. Additional changes to Medicaid benefits will start to hit in January 2028. So I think we are really kind of gearing up to see an increase in need as some of these social safety nets get cut. And, we're in a temporary partial government shutdown right now. So we have about 2,000 federal employees that work for DHS across the state. So we've been working to make sure we get food access to our TSA employees and others as well.
And so when things like that happen, how soon after do you see a spike in demand or need when these events occur? Because from the looks at how things are rolling in Washington, D.C., I mean, we could be experiencing these threats of shutdowns every few months. as the political divide continues in our nation's capital. So how long after do you see those impacts here at home through your organization?
So I think it kind of depends. My guess is as this gets to be more regular, we might start to see the impacts more and more quickly. We still are getting reports for families who were affected by the government shutdown in the fall who are still recovering because they put a lot of stuff on their credit cards. They're still kind of paying off debt from the fall. For the most part, I think in this current shutdown, we were reaching out to some of our partners at the airport, and people were kind of okay, right? They're okay till you miss your first paycheck. And one of the things I think that was really eye-opening, maybe not eye-opening, just reinforced, I think, what we're seeing and just how hard it is for folks to make ends meet. Missing one paycheck is really not feasible for a lot of families. Missing two paychecks, impossible, right? So a lot of people, again, can kind of hold on, maybe one paycheck they can get through, but if the second paycheck is missed, that's where they really are raising their hands and saying, I can't do this anymore on my own.
We're going to be speaking in the next block with First Lady Jaime Green, and I know she's been particularly focused on kids and food insecurity in Hawaii. I know that you do a lot of programs through the schools, and a lot of kids, from my understanding, sometimes school can be the only place that they're eating. What kind of a difference, there's been all this talk about having free lunch for schools. Having those free and reduced, but perhaps in the future fully free, what kind of a difference does that make, do you think?
I think it will make an enormous difference for a few different reasons. One is that we know our kids are at a special risk of food insecurity, and let's meet them where they are, right? We know we have kids at school, so if we can make sure they get at least 2 healthy meals a day, that'll make a huge difference for families. We do see during school break, so summertime, right now, spring break, this can be a really especially difficult time for families who did rely on food at school. Some of the things that we do at the Foodbank is we have our school pantry program, something we're really proud of. We have 59 school pantries right now across DOE schools in Oahu and Kauai, and our partners at the Maui Food Bank and the Food Basket on Hawaii Island also have similar programs. These are where kids can get a healthy snack during the day, and then they mostly take home food, so they have food for weekends and for evenings so that they're still able to get healthy meals. So expanding programs like these. But I think back to the issue of stigma, this is also something we definitely see with kids. So for instance, we have elementary school pantries where the kids will line up and they'll take home a bag of food for the weekend. No one's embarrassed, no big deal. By the time you get to middle school and high school, the kids are embarrassed. So oftentimes we'll pivot to what we call a choice pantry. This is a place where the kids can just go get what they need. Maybe it's in the nurse's office. So kids might be embarrassed to say I'm hungry, but they might feel okay to say, like, I have a stomach ache. Maybe that stomach ache is because you didn't eat anything since lunch yesterday. So I think the more that we can make this acceptable, so universal free school meals is a way, hey, it's for everybody. No one needs to be embarrassed that they can't afford to pay for their lunch. And then I think we as a community can really know that our keiki are being taken care of.
I think you also made a good, interesting point, I should say, about those in higher education and those in college. Because, when we were, or going all the way back when we were in college, it often was a joke, that you would have to just you got to starve because you don't have money and it's at the end of the month. And, it was just kind of a thing. But when you think about it, these students are actually food, they are struggling the same through these same issues. And so what you're describing here at these, secondary and elementary education institutions where these opportunities for people to get these meals and food products, is that something that you would look at through universities or college students who may be also experiencing the same thing?
I think absolutely, right? If you're going to ask somebody to learn or to be productive, right, we want our kids to be learning in school, whether that's in elementary school or in college. You can't learn if you're hungry. And it is funny, all of us remember, right? We had ramen, no big deal. It's kind of like what you did. But if you really think about it, it's not okay, right? It's not okay that we're asking our young people, our children, our young adults to make these really difficult choices. Can I eat dinner, or do I put gas in my car to go to work, right? And Kids in higher ed have an especially difficult time because the benefits, and it's difficult. You have to, work a certain number of hours, but can you work or do you go to school? And as we really think about how we build our future, it's on, we really need to support our families and our kids. It's the same for parents. One of the things I learned recently about food insecurity, and this is a new term, it's I can't remember it, of course, but for families, for parents, right? If you're food insecure yourself or your children are food insecure, you're not only, not doing as present as you can be, right, for your day, but at work, right? We're seeing, it's presenteeism. So people either they're skipping work because they're taking care of their kids who might get sick because they're not eating enough, or you're showing up, but you're not really there because you're so worried and stressed out about when am I going to feed my kids for dinner? Like, that's not you're not able to be productive. And I just feel so strongly, if this is something we can just take off of the table of people needing to worry about, right? Like, if we can just make sure, hey, our kids all get enough healthy food to eat. Our kupuna all get enough healthy food to eat. We can focus on lots of other issues, right? There's a lot happening out there. But if I just think we're not setting up our communities for success if people don't have healthy food to eat.
When you lay out the numbers, though, the scale of the problem feels so vast. Do you think that this is something that we can actually tackle as a community? And if so, how do we actually do that?
I absolutely think it's something that we can tackle together. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is we don't have that big of a population, right? We live on an island. We live in a place where we don't have a lot of kind of people coming and going. It's a constrained community. It's also a place where people really do look out for each other and take care of each other. So I think that we have kind of the necessary environment to really make a change. And I also think once we start to look at the downstream effects of food insecurity, we're actually paying so much more as a society because people, are food insecure, they're not getting enough good, healthy food to eat, and then we're seeing those effects in the healthcare system, right? We're seeing those effects downstream. People get diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all that could have been solved if we paid for those kids to have a nice, healthy meals at school, right? So I think that if we can take a step back, it's actually much more cost effective to invest in healthy food today than to be paying the bill down the line in terms of significantly increased healthcare costs. And there's studies out there that say, for every food insecure person, we're paying $1,000 plus a year in additional healthcare costs that could have been addressed in a much more efficient way by just getting them healthy food.
During this legislative session, is there anything specific that you're going to lawmakers about to promote exactly what you're saying, or ways in which the state and legislature and government can be further assisting those in this community?
I think we're lucky to live in a place, again, where our state government has really looked at all of the different ways that we can support families, that we can support food insecurity. Something that we're really tracking right now is a Farm to Families measure to increase funds available for food banks to actually purchase food from local farmers. We love this program because it allows us to invest with our local farmers, with local producers, so that we can start to really invest, again, long-term. Growing more food on these islands will make a big difference if there's disasters, and it becomes cheaper, but it's also so healthy. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing from the families when we are able to partner with our local farmers and get local fresh food to folks, it lasts, right? It's good, it's healthy, it lasts, it's from this place, people feel really good about it. So, but it's also more expensive. So for us at Hawaii Food Bank, we really know how to stretch a dollar. It's another thing we feel really proud about. We always, when we can, we prioritize working with our local farmers, but the more that we can get support in doing that, to know that we can commit to farmers, making sure we can buy good, healthy local food, and then get those into communities that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it. So that's something that we're really hopeful this year.
There's sort of two sides to this that I'm curious to ask you about. I mean, one is what you just mentioned, that Hawaii is so wanting to help others. And we really saw that during the shutdown when, everybody went to the library and donated. There was this massive food drive, and we were able to, collect a lot of food. So for people who want to help and maybe feel like they don't know what's the best way to help? And again, for people who want assistance but may feel that stigma, what's your message to them?
So first, for folks who might need help and don't know where to go about or feel a little bit embarrassed, we really want to say Hawaii Food Bank is for everyone. Hawaii Food Bank is for you. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. In fact, you have all these other folks that really want to help, and that's a neat thing about the Food Bank's network is we rely so heavily on volunteers. So there's folks both at the food bank and with a network of our partner agencies that are working to get food into community that are all completely volunteer driven. So know that there's help for you. You can go to our website, hawaiifoodbank.org, click on Get Help, and there's a whole list. We have multiple distributions happening every single day right in your own community. So that's number one. If you want to help and you don't know how, same thing. Come to our website. There's lots of different ways you can donate food. We gratefully accept all kinds of food items. Lots of folks will put on, work with their church, with their school, with their workplace to do a food drive, and dollars. I really always like to encourage people, if you can afford to make a donation, that's a really efficient way to give. We can really stretch that dollar because we did a little research study last year just to understand how far our dollars stretched compared to what any of us could do going to the grocery store. And on average, our dollar stretches about 5 times as far. So that's because we're buying at the container level, and we have wonderful partnerships with food providers, and Matson, Pasha are helping us with our shipping. So we can really stretch those dollars. So don't sometimes people feel like, I'm dialing it in to just give a donation, but we can really put that to good use. In fact, every dollar donated to the food bank allows us to provide more than 2 meals into community.
Wow, 2 meals, amazing. Amy, always so good to talk to you. Sorry, Ryan.
No, yeah, I'm just going to say thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing for the community. We know that we seem to always bring you on during a time where there's a crisis. So it's great to just kind of talk numbers and get an update. So we really appreciate you and all the work that you guys continue to do there at the food bank. We'll be joined by First Lady Jaime Green as we continue on in this discussion about food security here in Hawaii. You're watching Spotlight Now. We'll be right back.
Aloha, on this Thursday, I'm Guy Huggy with this weather update for you. We still are dealing with that old kona low. You remember the one that swamped us over the weekend? Well, it's still over us with clouds and a few scattered showers, but behind it, another kona low is developing. We're going to see more wet weather, and we could get some heavy rainfall that's going to linger for several days. And obviously, with that situation developing, we could see maybe flooding conditions develop. And we're thinking from Thursday through the weekend. So the advice is that if you live in an area that is flooded before or impacted by the last kona low, take some precautions because it's going to be a long run of wet weather. Now this morning, we are seeing scattered showers, and that's all from the old kona low where the tail end is still over the state. We've got cloudy skies and, just not a lot of beautiful weather out there for the next several days. Now, the good thing is that this next kona low, not expected to bring us strong winds. In fact, the winds will be quite slow, but when that kona low drops in, we might get a little uptick in winds, but it's going to be more a rain event than a wind event. So the winds are going to run rather light, and there's consequences to that with those light winds. So today, with the light winds, it's going to be a little sticky, might even be some volcanic haze lingering around, and there's a chance for some afternoon pop-up showers. So heads up on that. This is the scenario that we'll likely see through tomorrow before that next kona low comes in with more significant rainfall. Now, we got some significant surf building for north and west shores on a new swell that's picking up. The issue is still the brown water from that last kona low and all the runoff. The water conditions are just pilau for some areas. Do the eyeball test before jumping out. And hey, we got another south swell that's going to be picking up. And because of the light winds, dirty water notwithstanding, conditions for the waves are pretty nice because of those light winds. So there's the Kona low, right? This is the old Kona low, right? Still going to be cloudy and damp for the next 2 days. And then that next Kona low develops with more rainfall. We could get some heavy rain running through Friday, through Saturday, and through Sunday and Monday as well. There will be some breaks in the rain, but some areas could get some significant rainfall. Again, that's starting from Thursday through Monday. So make sure you download that Hawaii News Now weather app, and again, get ready for an extended run of wet weather.
Kitchen Scraps is excited to spotlight
This is Hawaii News Now.
tonight's top story. Who can stay still the longest, Steph?
Bruh, don't even blink.
Watch local news, first alert weather, and documentaries for free on your H&N streaming app.
Get ready, Kayla. They're coming back.
Is an H&N investigation?
Download your H&N streaming app now.
Hello, and thanks for coming back here to Spotlight Now. We're continuing on in our conversation about food security. And again, before we welcome in our next guest, we want to continue to encourage you, those of you who are watching, to email us your questions at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com, or you can head over to Facebook and enter your questions and comments there as well.
And we want to welcome in First Lady of Hawaii, Jaime Green. And the reason that, this all sort of hit our radar is because in the State of the State, the governor did mention you by name and said that you've been doing a lot of work on food insecurity in Hawaii, and just very interested to know why this is a calling for you, and also just backing up to what Amy shared today, your thoughts about what she had to say.
Right. Well, it's very concerning. For me, the fact that the situation is getting worse is upsetting, because in general, we never want to see any child go hungry. And our partnership started with the food bank back when Josh was first lieutenant governor, because that's when he was the head of the state food drive. And so that's how we began our partnership. And after that, once he became governor, it's something that we remain passionate about. And really, we live in Hawaii. We live in a place where no child should be hungry. So much of what we do, whether it's socially, whether it's culturally, it's connected to food. That's how we grew up, with potlucks, with, aunties bringing over sushi or eating poi and poke. I mean, it's so much a part of who we are here in Hawaii, and to know that our children are not getting their basic needs met is something that we have to do our best to help this situation. And we saw during COVID there was the spike. We had an issue. The numbers were not great, but it was something that our whole community could rally around. Then COVID struck, and we saw anyone could go hungry, and we saw that children especially were getting their meals from school. So when school was out, there was a huge need in our community. And then it got a little better, and now because of federal policies, because of inflation that just skyrocketed, we're in a situation where we need to help our community. We need to help our keiki. So that's why we are focusing on it.
Yeah, and keying in on one of those areas that we were talking about, and that is that school lunch and that free school lunch that could potentially become something that is offered. We know that will come with a price tag, and that there was legislation and discussion that needs to happen there. But why do you think, and what do you think difference could that make with this issue that we're seeing, and what steps could be taken to maybe move towards that model of a free lunch for all children in Hawaii?
Right. Well, one thing that we're looking at, it's not just free lunch, it's free school meals. So we know that breakfast is often, everyone says it's an important meal of the day, and often it's skipped, right? So being able to offer that in schools for free is something that will help our children be ready to learn, be ready to focus on their studies, on their activities, whatever comes throughout their day, and not having to worry about the stress of being hungry and where their next meal is coming from. So it's both breakfast as well as lunch, and maybe even after school meals, depending on, the different schools and opportunities. So one thing we're looking at, what we looked at last session, and I'm very grateful to the legislature for passing this bill, is helping our kids who have reduced costs get free lunch, and free meals. So that's affected about a little over 11,400 students this past school year. So they are now getting free meals at schools. And what we're looking at in terms of expansion is also our ALICE families, because the free and reduced meals really is part of a larger federal program, but it doesn't take into consideration Hawaii's high cost of living and our ALICE families, who are all working families but aren't able to make ends meet as well. And so we plan to expand that in the next school year, and that'll add another about 11,500 students to get free meals also. So we really, and hopefully, if we are able to continue working on this, it's part of a 5-year plan to maybe get to universal school meals.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this Nourish Hawaii initiative. What exactly, Nourishing Hawaii rather, through the Department of Education and lawmakers. Tell us a little bit about what exactly that is and what you're pushing for.
So I think for years, we've all known that we want to make our food system better. We want to get healthy food to our keiki and make sure that they have access to culturally inspired meals that they, locally sourced meals that they want to eat. And so I think everyone in the department, as well as Senator Dela Cruz in the legislature, has really been trying to promote the idea of, promoting agriculture so that we can have enough sources to feed our kids. And what it does is really brings everyone together. So all of the individual great work that has been done over the years, it's bringing everyone together. So it's not just the Department of Education, the legislature, DBED, ADC, it's community colleges. It's really bringing people across the administration, as well as nonprofits and our farmers and agricultural community together to see how we can map commodities, how we can do better menu plans so that, again, we're feeding our kids locally sourced food that they want to eat.
One of the things that's also included in that is these regional kitchens.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what that is and how that overall will help this need?
So what regional kitchens will do is it will strengthen the purchasing power of the Department of Education. Because there's smaller farms out there, if we can aggregate all of what their products are and say, well, these are the kinds of commodities that are currently grown, or these are the kinds of commodities that we need grown, that we want to serve in our meals, it provides a steady demand for our farmers so that they can invest in the proper crops, in the proper technology, whatever it is that they actually need, so that the distribution system will go to regional kitchens. And we're working on the first one, but we hope to have one in various regions as well as across the state, so that we can buy all of the product, be able to source it, create the meals, and then distribute it across the state. So it's something that we're hoping will be a win-win for our entire community, and again, strengthens our whole food system, because it will help all of our farmers and other food producers, whether it's aquaculture or our pig farmers, chicken farmers, everyone will be on the same page, knowing what kind of meals we're making in the school system. Because I think over 20 million meals are served per year in just the school system alone, our public school system. So that's a lot of demand and opportunity for our local farmers.
Yeah, tremendous buying power.
Yes.
And we always talk about wanting to eat local, and this
Right.
is obviously a wonderful pipeline to make that happen. Do you share Amy's optimism that this is actually a problem that we can tackle together? Because I think when you hear her numbers, all the metrics that she laid out, whether it's 42% on the neighbor islands being food insecure, or 45% of caregivers across Hawaii, 30% of us overall. I mean, how do we actually do that? And do you share her optimism that it's possible?
I do. I think, one of the arguments that she made is that Hawaii is not that big. I mean, the numbers feel staggering because it's so personal to us as a community, but we also know that we are a great community that wants to help each other. So we only have, about 1.4 million people in Hawaii, and we have enough. We also do have enough dollars. So it's, unfortunately, we do have a big spectrum of wealthier people as well as, those are in need. But we have a very generous community. And even those who may not, have the means to give a lot will give a little. And I think all of us working together on this, it's our neighbors, it's our friends, it's our coworkers, and it could be us. We've seen during the federal shutdown how at any time there were new groups of people who had never needed any kind of help before. It's not a them problem, it's a we problem. And I think here in Hawaii, we recognize how special this place is. We want that connection to our aina, we want that connection to our culture, so that this is an important issue for all of us, that we can take on this challenge together.
And what you're describing in all these issues, they're not obviously confined to Hawaii either, that this is something that every state is dealing with. I'm wondering if you have seen a model or had conversations with other lawmakers or leaders in other states that has inspired you, that have allowed you to have this dialogue. I know that at the National Governors Association, there is a track for First Ladies, and you guys get to share ideas and thoughts. Have you had any of those conversations on a national level, or looked at other states that could provide some assistance with trying to framework how this looks?
Oh, definitely. So unfortunately, we missed this past February Governors Association meeting, but in general, I have met with other First Ladies, other governors about this issue. And, for California, for example, they offer universal school meals. Many other states have regional kitchens, or what they call centralized kitchens. There's a lot of models out there that both the legislature as well as, like I said, all of our partners are looking at to go and see what their models are. So there's been a lot of collaboration and a lot of things we're looking at. But of course, there are things in Hawaii that we want to be able to, use what we learn from others, but then also incorporate our own values and culture into our system.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you said that resonates with me is just feeding kids food that they want to eat, right? Food that is culturally based. And you are the first Native Hawaiian First Lady since statehood. And I think, I'm curious how culture sort of informs how you take on this problem, because we do know that Native Hawaiians are disproportionately affected by a lot of these issues and have higher food insecurity than the general population. So how does that all sort of come together for you?
Right. Well, and that's what, it's not just about feeding them once or feeding them, corn dogs or chicken nuggets, although my son was a big fan of chicken nuggets. That being said, to know where their food comes from, to know that our ancestors were growers, to know the history of kalo and uala, sweet potato, or ulu, breadfruit. I mean, it's not necessarily something that all of us have grown up with, but bringing it back into the diet, we see how nutritious it is. We see the benefit. The kids get to learn on different levels, whether it's how to farm, whether it's gaining pride in their culture, what their ancestors knew, and the knowledge that they had that is now being passed on, that we're bringing back into the classroom for them to connect to the land, to connect to this place. There's so many different levels, and that's part of the meals. It's not just creating a menu in a lab. It's about asking the kids what they want and how to incorporate healthy ingredients to it and locally sourced products. So it's really, it's bringing everyone together to kind of incorporate all of these things, whether it's culture, whether it's aina, whether it's, our knowledge of our ancestors. All of that plays a role into feeding our kids.
What you're describing now obviously will take some time, but I'm just wondering, just for a practical sense, where things stand right now. We're in the middle of the legislative session. Is there anything you are targeting or are really focused on right now in the short term that is sort of the priority that you're asking for lawmakers, or any goals that are coming up that you can speak to?
Right. Well, again, the farm to school programs, I mean, it's just keeping up the support. I think last year was a landmark year for a lot of things. We got money for the regional kitchen, so that is now being built. So we just need to continue funding for that. We did get the money to offer free lunches, free meals for our reduced families. That will continue into our Alice families as we expand that program. So we also need continued support for that. And probably we will need support for a pilot program so that we can see how to develop universal school meals. That's just gonna, all these pilot programs, working with our farmers, seeing the different needs. I mean, it's a constant, struggle when there's so many great programs out there that need support that have had funding cut. We just kind of need our eyes still focused that we're in the middle of these projects and we need to see them through.
I'm curious, we're approaching an election year, and I want to pivot a little bit just to your experience in this first term and what these last few years have been like. We've talked to you over time, but curious to get, your reflections.
It's a lot. I had no idea what we were signing up for. In terms of, my initiatives, it's constant, growing process. I always thought I was a child advocate. I mean, that's where my heart was. That's where I started out. But I really, as I gain more experience and knowledge, as I speak to first ladies across the country, as I see what our needs are here in Hawaii, we pivot to different issues that we see a space to actually help and support. So it's kind of been a growing process. But it's, we had the Maui wildfires that was the whole first year. We did FestPack, which was an amazing event to bring, leaders from across the Pacific to Hawaii. And then now concentrating on food security, especially in this time of need in our community. And with all of the federal government, and inflation and those issues, it's just one thing after another. I'm also looking at going back to focusing on our opportunity youth and how we help, our kids, our youth, age 14 to 24. And as we said, there's a lot of times our young adults, that's this youth category. There, can you imagine just having our 18-year-olds and saying, okay, go for it. Find a job, figure out college, figure out an apartment all on your own. It's staggering, and we provide our safety net for our children, and we also want to provide that safety net for all of our youth.
I'm wondering too, just how do you manage time and family time and your husband's schedule? I mean, we talk to him and we're like, at what point does he sleep? Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you as a couple manage that? And how does he manage his time? I mean,
right.
How often do you see each other every night? I mean, it's got to be a challenge.
Well, we actually see each other a lot more because before, when he was a representative and a senator, we were traveling back and forth to the Big Island. Yeah. So, and he was also always on call between working at the ledge and then being on call in the emergency rooms. We see each other a lot more now. But I do think that a big benefit for him was being an emergency room doctor because he's able to take power naps and really utilize, whatever time he has to power nap, he can wake up refreshed. For me, it's like I'd need at least 2 hours to make a difference at all. But I think one of the things we work together a lot, Josh and I'm really grateful that we really are a partnership. So there's a lot of issues that we work on together. And so I'm at the Capitol a lot, working with him in the office. And then when he comes home, he catches me up on other things too. And, our daughter just graduated, so at least we only have one at home, but he's very active in all of his sports and activities. So we still have to balance that as well. As well as our puppy.
So, and, looking ahead to the next term, if you are able to continue mm-hmm. this work, what will your priority be then? What are you hoping to focus on?
Well, continuing the work. I mean, just because we are planting the seeds right now and we're seeing some development, it doesn't mean that the work is done and that we can step back. We still need to continue this support. Like I said, for regional kitchens, this is just the first one we're working on. For universal school meals, it's just the start of that. And then we hope to grow that out as well. For our opportunity youth, this year I'm trying to focus on developing some kauhale for our opportunity youth. That's something that Josh has, kauhale for all of these different communities. I'm lobbying to get at least a couple that are youth focused. And of course, raising the Native Hawaiian voice. It's not something, there's not a particular thing. I mean, I had looked at developing a Native Hawaiian Cultural Center, but I really do want that to be community-led. So it's really whatever projects come up where we can incorporate our Native Hawaiian values into that. It's there's a lot to do, a lot we hope to do.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you so much for spending time here on the St. Patrick's Day with us and for joining us and continue to keep us updated on all that you're doing. We'll talk more about food security here in Hawaii with our friends over at Aloha United Way. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
We're continuing on in our conversation on food security, and we are joined now by our friends at Aloha United Way. This is our community spotlight where we highlight the good works that are happening in the community through our partnership with Aloha United Way.
Yeah, and so much of what we talked about really intersects with the work that they do. So we want to welcome in now Kayla Keehu-Alexander, who is the Vice President of Community Impact at Aloha United Way. You're a friend of ours. You've been on before. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk about sort of what the two guests that we had on just now, sort of how that intersects with the work that you're doing at Aloha United Way. We've talked a lot on this program about 211. Tell us a little bit about the calls that you get related to food insecurity.
So food has persistently been one of the top 3 reasons that people call 211. And last year during the government shutdown and subsequent SNAP pausing, we saw that number skyrocket. We were just overwhelmed with families who are trying to pivot and find other alternatives when SNAP was no longer available. We were very fortunate that our state and our governor and DHS were able to jump in and provide relief. But for so many families, even the SNAP benefits just don't cover it day to day. And so many families are just not eligible for SNAP, and they are still struggling financially.
What are those conversations like when you're talking to some of those families about the choices that they're having to make, the other issues that persist beyond just food security? I imagine that there are other, whether it be bills or things that have to be paid. How are you folks helping to fill that gap and the conversations that are having with these families to help provide them support? Because I imagine it can seem overwhelming when there is so much need in the community.
Absolutely. So when someone calls, we're hearing all those realities. The parent who's only eating 1 meal a day so that their children can eat, or the father who worked overtime last month and now he lost his SNAP this month. What is he going to do? Or the families who are sharing that at the end of the month they've paid all their bills, they did everything they're supposed to do, but there's really nothing left for their groceries. So our 211 specialists are incredible. They tap into our database. They talk story with the caller and figure out what else are they doing right now to try and offset those costs. Sometimes it is signing up for SNAP. Sometimes there's opportunities for housing vouchers or affordable housing options. So we try to kind of, understand what the whole family is going through, understand them holistically, and connect them to the exact resource that's going to help offset those costs.
We talk about 211 a lot on this program, but one of the things that really surprised me in preparing for our discussion today, you've had 51,000 calls already this year. We are only in March. What does that tell you about the need in our community?
Yeah, so that was actually from 2025. And those numbers have been going up every single year since the pandemic. What we're seeing is, first of all, it's great that folks are reaching out. We want people to call 211 when there is a need. But it also tells us that need is not going away. Things like food insecurity, it's just not getting better. It's persisting. In some cases, it's getting worse. It's becoming the new normal for many families. And that should be concerning for all of us, that so many folks are reaching out now for the very first time saying, I'm working full time, but I still just can't make ends meet for my family.
One of the unique things about Aloha United Way is you're working with these partner agencies. And so when you talk, there's an issue like food security, there are various agencies beyond the food bank, and there's Meals on Wheels. There's a bunch of different organizations that you work with. When you begin seeing those organizations needing help, and as the organization that is then funneling help to them, how do you folks keep up with that? Because again, you guys are kind of at the top here, and the demand is coming in through 211. There's the nonprofit partners that you work with. How are you helping to support these nonprofits that are ultimately helping the callers? It's sort of like a big circle, but if you can explain that role that you folks play in supporting these partner agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. So strengthening Hawaii's safety net is core to our mission, and we actually have a safety net grant. So we recently dispersed $420,000 to 33 community organizations for a variety of critical programs. About half of those are actually food security programs, for everything from keiki to kupuna. So last year, these partners provided groceries, hot meals, after-school snacks to over 10,000 individuals. About half of them were children. And so that's one of the ways that we're trying to support community. We also use 211 data. That data really helps us to pinpoint where calls are coming from. It helps us identify where there's resource gaps. And then us at Aloha United Way, we try to make sure that those resource deserts have funding, that nonprofits working in that area are able to have the resources they need to serve that community that is just out of reach.
Given the scale of the problem and what you're describing, do you think that we have enough resources to actually meet the needs, given how vast they are?
From a philanthropic perspective, no. There is, there's many solutions. There's a lot of ways that we can reduce barriers to access food, but philanthropy alone isn't going to solve that problem, unfortunately. It'll need a lot of support from government.
When you're talking about 211 and the support that it gets, when you look at the call volume, as we said, 51,000, right, last year, how are you folks continuing to support all of these calls coming in? Because I imagine as 211 continues to grow, I feel like we've learned more about it after the pandemic. More people were utilizing that service, and it became somewhat of a go-to to that. How do you continue to provide that support as the volume, I imagine, continues to grow when crises come up, when people need support?
Yeah, so we have a team of very talented specialists, and we're always looking for more. We're very lucky that the community of partners that we have are very eager to let us know when they have new great programs and that we can connect folks with. We really rely on the nonprofit community to let us know when those resources are available so that we can be that connector and get people exactly what they need. Luckily, 211 is statewide, so on every single island, no matter where you are, we're going to be able to find resources for you.
One of the things that struck me about what Amy shared was that folks either didn't know that the programs existed, or they were embarrassed that they had some insecurities themselves about reaching out for help. What do you tell folks about the 211 call? I know it's anonymous, and someone who just needs information can start there.
Yeah, and there's no reason to have any shame. This is something that's actually far more prevalent than any of us have realized. And when folks call 211, we don't ask too many questions. We just ask, what's your zip code, and what's your gender, and we really just want to know what the need is and kind of where they are so we can pinpoint that resource for them. But our specialists will talk story, they'll get to know them, they'll get to see, what else are you encountering, so that we can get a variety of resources and that you're not just you're just hung up on just the one thing. You can get a kind of holistic care.
I'm wondering for you on a personal level, what fulfills you in this role and what you do? I mean, because I think one of the things, the unique things that you get to see is those connections being made and people that are getting help. Explain to us what that is like for you, because oftentimes we're reporting on all this need, but we don't really see the follow through. You get to kind of experience that and be that connection. What has that been like for you to experience that?
It's absolutely wonderful to hear back from our community partners to see how that flow of funds, folks donate to AUW, they don't always know where those dollars go. It goes right into community, that you're reinvesting in your community. And so our nonprofit partners usually report back to us and share what those dollars did. And so we're hearing of families who are escaping a domestic violence situation. They have nowhere to go. They have nothing to eat. And dollars like the safety net dollars go to providing temporary housing for them, a couple of meals so that they can be sustained until they can get their resources and get back on their feet. For us, we really want to focus on helping the most vulnerable, our keiki, our kupuna. So that's where a lot of our investments go. And our community partners are so incredible. But we also like to keep things anonymous, right? We don't want anyone to call anyone out. So we allow for that anonymity, but we love to hear those success stories, and we're so proud of our partners and the accomplishments that they've been able to make.
Yeah, just a final thought from you and what you would tell the audience today about food security and about calling 211.
So if you know anyone experiencing food insecurity, absolutely tell them to call 211. It's easy, it's anonymous, it's free, it's statewide, and for us, food insecurity isn't necessarily a scarcity problem. It's a problem of access. We have a lot of food. It's just people can't get it. And there's lots of different ways. Some of the previous guests shared some of the bills passing through our state legislature that could really help access to food, including free school meals, including reducing SNAP barriers, as well as farm to families programs. Those are all wonderful initiatives to be supporting.
Okay, always great catching up with you. Thank you so much for providing those insights. And again, for all the work that you folks do at Aloha United Way. We'll be back with more Spotlight Now right after this.
Kitchen Scraps is excited to spotlight.
This is Hawaii News Now.
Tonight's top story. Who can stay still the longest, Steph?
Bruh, don't even blink.
Watch local news, first alert weather, and documentaries for free on your H&N streaming app.
Get ready, Keahi. They're coming back.
Is an H&N investigation?
Download your H&N streaming app now.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders. And taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, we want to thank all of our guests for coming on and talking about an issue that really is impacting so many in our community. And you hear the numbers from Amy Miller. It is pretty staggering when you think about it and just how much this issue is impacting people throughout the state.
Yeah, whenever she comes on, it really is just so sobering to hear about how many families are experiencing this. And if the scale is that vast, surely we all know people who are experiencing this. So part of the reason we have these conversations is really to shed light on that and also to, get rid of some of that stigma. Please, if you need help, reach out to the food bank, reach out to Kayla's line to 211 at Aloha United Way. There are resources. I mean, I thought what she said right there at the end was so important, that the food is there, right? We have the resources. It's just an access issue.
Yeah, and also great to hear from the First Lady about the work that she's doing. She's really championing this as an issue. We have seen how the role of First Lady and others who have come before have really picked some signature issues, and it seems like this is something that she's not only passionate about, but something that she says is going to be important that they continue on. Should, of course, Governor Green get another 4 years, it's going to be one of her priorities as they continue along as well. So we want to thank all of our guests and thank you for engaging in this conversation. Next week, we're going to be switching gears. We're going to be focusing in on the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. A lot happening every time during the legislative session with OHA.
Yeah, Kaika Hele, who is the OHA board chair, will be joining us here to talk about what they're asking for. We know that there's renewed talk about Kaka'ako Makai and what should happen to that land. Last legislative session, there was a lot of talk about that. It didn't end up happening, so what's up to bat this legislative session? We'll be asking him.
You can send us your questions to spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com. Thanks for tuning in, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Aloha.